Hi there, and welcome to the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'm your host, Ian Morgan, and this is the financial performance podcast for entrepreneurs looking to get a better understanding of their numbers, to plug the leaks in their business, and to move from surviving to thriving. Hey there, guys. Thank you for joining us. So today with us, we have Sonia Gill, and Sonia runs Heads Up, and they specialise in helping schools to become outstanding. And the schools that they support are 300% more likely to become outstanding than the average. And they do this without focusing on the Ofsted inspection framework. Sonia is a qualified teacher, and she was also selected from thousands to join the John Lewis Leadership Programme. She's also the author of 2 best-selling books, The Journey to Outstanding and Successful Difficult Conversations in School. Welcome, Sonia.
Thank you. Hello.
So, first things first, Sonia, just to give people a bit of a flavour and everything sort of about you. Obviously, we've got a great introduction of all the stuff that you've been doing over the years. But can you just give people a bit of a story of where you came from? How did you lead to Heads Up? How did you get there?
Yeah, so my kind of the most personal bits of my background are I have a psychology degree. I then went on to qualify as a teacher in primary, and I taught every age from reception 16. Actually, I tell a lie, I qualified in junior. You could do that back in the day, but I've taught every age from reception to 16, and then I'd planned to become an educational psychologist, but then realised I didn't quite know really what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I ended up I applied and was successful in joining the John Lewis Graduate Leadership Programme, which was wonderful because it gave me exposure to a lot of different ways of working, ideas. John Lewis is a great company to work in. I had many happy years in the partnership before I took the plunge, if you like, to set up my own business, Heads Up, which really is a combination of all of those pieces of my puzzle, I guess. What really fascinated me about schools, and this was driven a lot by my psychology degree and my work at John Lewis, was why do so many schools get stuck at good and a few make it to outstanding? I'd always had a love for education, having been a teacher, and so I created Heads Up to help schools across that gap and to increase the number that move from good to great.
Fantastic. And how was that initial shift to go from to working into John Lewis, a complete flip, something completely different? How was that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure rose-tinted glasses could come into play. I'm not sure they do. It was hard. It was exciting. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. And I'd always thought I wanted to set something up myself, do something myself. And I had, the opportunity to actually, do what I'd been saying for a long time and take the plunge. So, yeah, I think it's funny, isn't it? You work in a business, but in a large business like John Lewis, it's not like being a business owner, isn't it? Is it? You kind of do very specific things. There's a lot of support around you, a lot of people go to, and somebody as business owner, you've got to wear every single hat possible, many of which you don't know, what they entail or how to do them well. So it was exciting and hard. I think if it's not exciting, you'd quit quite early.
And do you think that sort of John Lewis experience enabled you to see schools in a very different way, because now you had a different view, like a disconnected view, as opposed to just being, directly involved previously?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for a start, I had a lot more years of experience under my belt than when I was a teacher. So, just more life experience. But I think, John Lewis was always about how do we, be high performing? How do we create a really great culture, but also, internally with our teams and externally with our customers and as an organisation, which really resonated to me, because even when I was studying psychology, it was always like, well, what are the A players doing? How do some people manage to hit this level, but not everyone? And so that lens, if I looked at schools again, which I'd always kept an eye on, if you like, or kind of in the news and so on, even when I was out of education. It's just that kind of, like I say, it was a different lens to look at those schools with and kind of go, well, I think education's the most important place to have high performance. So some do it, but again, it's always this kind of 5-6% number, isn't it, that achieve it, and the rest of us are good or worse.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I can definitely see that and agree. And do you think Heads Up and that could exist in the way it exists now if you'd just gone straight from what you're doing within schools at that point, straight to Heads Up, or do you think the John Lewis experience really opened your eyes to see things differently?
Definitely. But yeah, definitely, you know, working John Lewis, having those more years of experience, you know, you've got to remember as a teacher now, I was in my early 20s then, and whilst I might think I might have thought I knew everything, I don't think I did, but if I did, I certainly didn't, and even now it's the same. So yeah, definitely the John Lewis experience was part of it, in the same way that the teaching experience was part of it. So if I didn't have that, then I wouldn't have looked at education as an area of passion.
So if we fast forward and then to the sort of inception of Heads Up, what was that like? What was did you go straight from John Lewis into Heads Up at that point? And yeah, what triggered that? Why suddenly at that point?
Yeah, so when I left John Lewis, I kind of gave myself a few months just to think about what I might do, because I'd always said I wanted to start a business, but I didn't know this was the business. So I had a period where I just, you know, I was lucky that I could take a little bit of time out, if you like, to explore different ideas I had and kind of, you know, indulge in just like what would that be like, research how I could go about it, a whole range of different ideas. And the one that actually kept coming out top was to train as a coach. So that's actually the first step I took. I trained as a coach with Animas, and really lucky in that, you know, Nick at Animas was great at helping people see how they could use and apply their skills. So that then got me thinking about, well, actually it'd be really good to go back to schools, to work with head teachers, support them. It's such a demanding, it's such an important role. And then, I don't know, I think business is always market research, if you like. You kind of see, well, what can I help people with that adds the most value to them and draws on the skill set I have. So, you know, over those first few years, I was really just understanding what's going on in schools. I'd always had this thought about outstanding, you know, what if we could make schools outstanding? But it felt a little bit kind of like, yeah, get real. That's not going to be possible, but it always lingered there. And then as time went by, I could start to see actually how it could happen. And over a decade on, I like to think we're kind of living up to that.
Fantastic. So how do things look today that are so different, I suppose, from those early stages of Heads Up? Because we all think we know exactly how we're going to do it when we start off, and yet actually often when we look back, yeah, that changed quite quickly. How have things changed? What mistakes and things did you make in those early stages? And what was working well that you needed to make sure that you maintained or built upon as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I did start off thinking I knew how it was going to work out. I think it's always been work in progress. So how's it changed looking back? Well, I mean, probably the biggest change is moving away from me doing everything as kind of like a sole trader, if you like, to actually we are now a business, you know, with employees and you know, support in various different forms. So that's really been the biggest change since Heads Up came about. I think the thing that did work well for us and continues to work well for us is we get great customer feedback. I've always been really precious about time, and you know, anyone's time in that sense. So, you know, if we're training school leaders, say they're taking a day out or multiple days out, if we don't really, you know, if we don't do a really good job, then actually we have robbed children of a day's worth of time. And you can do a lot in a school with a day's worth of time. So, you know, we've been really passionate about making sure that our services and our products work really well. We're always getting feedback, looking how we can improve what we do. You know, our feedback scores are over 9 out of 10 consistently, and so, you know, and much higher within that. So that's been something that we've always been able to do, and yeah, it has been a good continuation, if you like. And it's one of those scary things when you move from sole trader to other people delivering training that, you know, you can get, you know, you can deliver high quality. So that was a real transition point that, yeah, it was important to get right for us.
Okay. And how as you started then to sort of expand them from being that sole trader into having the other people, how did you have any specific challenges that you really faced that made you have to change direction, maybe take stock and go, oh, that wasn't a great direction to be going in, we need to maybe rethink that? Or did things generally go quite well?
So it's a really good question. I think the pandemic was a massive moment. I mean, it was for everyone. That was a real moment of looking at how we do things. I think prior to that, I'd actually say probably the biggest learning I'd had, and if I'd go back, I'd kind of be screaming this at myself, is when the way you work when you're essentially a sole trader, or you're a one-man person, or maybe you've got a VA or a bit of support, but essentially you are the person doing most of the things. The way you work in that setup, it's not right to just replicate that when you start bringing other people on. Like, you do need to change those working practices. I kind of hang my head in shame when I look at some of the ways we worked, which was just kind of like clone what I did, which was fine when it was predominantly me, but wasn't efficient when we brought more people in. Have I answered your question? I'm not sure I have.
No, not exactly, but it's good in terms of actually we're all guilty of that. We feel like we know people have systemized businesses, and we sort of go, oh, maybe I am the system and we should replicate that out and people should follow that. But I think in a coaching business specifically, there can be an underlying framework, but the coach has to be free to deliver in their character and the way that they coach. And if you try and force upon their most specific way of coaching, it's not going to work, and people are going to smell a rat, and it's not going to work. So I think having that freedom to be able to coach and deliver within a framework, but in your own style, I think is key. But I think everybody's guilty of that approach of just go, well, what I was doing was working, so just copy what I did.
And also, I think you don't also have the headspace. It goes back to that idea of like, you can just take 5 minutes to go, is this working as well as I can? Because you've kind of got an inkling quite often that something isn't right, but you've got to get on to the next thing. And it's almost like you can just pick a couple of those things off from time to time, even one a month, which is a habit I'm trying to get into. But of course, there's always the next thing to be doing, so it's not that easy. It's amazing how you can suddenly go, oh yeah, we do it that way. Everyone's life is easier, internally, externally, the customer gets a better result, it's better for the bottom line, everyone wins. But our heads are so full of stuff as business owners.
Yeah, and I think going back, actually, there was an element to go, you were saying that you look back and you're a bit sort of embarrassed about the stuff that you were doing. But ultimately, if we can't look back at what we were doing previously, a year ago, 2 years ago, and be embarrassed, then are we moving sort of quickly enough?
Definitely.
Time does sort of move us forward, and actually we need to be able to move forward with that.
Yeah.
I think another key thing that you raised, but you just sort of brushed upon, but actually I think it's a key issue we need to go back to, is the pandemic. My understanding, pre-pandemic, you're delivering all of your coaching and support directly in schools throughout the country. Schools now suddenly, all of a sudden, they're completely closed. A lot of teachers are probably furloughed or at least doing reduced contact in a lot of areas. They're also trying to deliver things in a way that they've never had to deliver before. Probably the last thing they're thinking about at that point is their own personal development and growth, because actually we just want to get lessons done that we don't even know how we're going to do them. And trying to get children engaged in something that we don't even know how to engage them on. How did you react? What did you do?
Yeah, well, so we work predominantly with head teachers and senior leaders. So, they're kind of sitting above that, at an organisational level, helping teachers and teaching assistants and everyone understand how do you do this job when you cannot have your children, whilst at the same time having, those vulnerable and key worker children coming into their schools. They had weird hybrid working before we were even discussing hybrid working as a nation. And for us, it really felt like a complete stop, and we were having a really great year. The business was going from strength to strength. We had a full order book until like Christmas, so beyond the end of the academic year. And of course, March, everything ended. It felt like. But I've heard some great. Well, my business mentor say, crisis is too good an opportunity to miss. And I think, well, is it too good an opportunity to miss? A crisis is an opportunity, Lindsay, to think differently in a way that we're not forced to most of the time. And I think that's what it did for us. I'm not going to pretend I had all the ideas. Thankfully, I'm surrounded by a lot of great mentors and friends and colleagues in business. But the way we adapted was we looked to support, in the first instance, to support head teachers get through this really uncertain time, because they were getting battered from I just don't know how they're all sane, to be honest. They're so amazing. They were being battered from every direction and being, because everyone was looking for leadership, but no one knew how to lead in a pandemic. So we created some online groups and communities to support head teachers get through this from a leadership perspective. So I didn't know how to, manage in a pandemic necessarily, but we could give really good leadership tips and kind of have their back, tell them what to watch out for. And I kind of said, we'll do it for 3 months because, this could all be over by then. And of course, several years on, we know how it panned out. But that was really nice, and be able to do that online, to bring them together, to be there regularly, provide training support for them through that period. That was the first thing we did. As time moved on, we were able to start training again and doing that online and getting people used to that. And then from there, we've been able to kind of evolve how we work with schools to embrace the fact that actually we can now work in a range of ways, and there are advantages through every way you can work. So yeah, that's kind of a brief version of how we adapted when the pandemic hit. It also just forced us to do things like, scrutinise costs, because when some of your income goes to zero, you're not delivering anything, so you can't recognise any income. Forced us to really scrutinise our, every single cost that we had, to trim things. I mean, honestly, I think I'm quite good at this stuff, but I remember there being this £9.99 subscription every month that the person who it was for to use was like, I just use the free account. And I was like, I know it's a tenner a month, you could say it's not much, but how on earth have we never picked that up before? It's really small, but those things creep in, and suddenly it's not £10 a month, it's several things that are £50 a month or £100 a month, and so on. So that was a really useful thing, and it made us look at some of our processes and think, we're just doing this really inefficiently. And I've had that niggling thought about we could do this better, but I've never actually done anything more than let it be a niggling thought, and now I really wish I had.
Yeah, I think
so. Yeah,
I picked up on 2 key things, and I think the one I want to do is a bit of an observation, because I don't think necessarily everybody would have picked up on it. That you said that you don't necessarily think you had great thinking, and that what you do is that actually you surround yourself with great people in order that actually you can accelerate and make better decisions. My view and my argument is that that's great thinking in the first place. Like, actually, to be aware that we don't know everything, and that actually sometimes things will happen that we don't know the answer to. But actually, we can find a good answer if you're surrounded by great people that you can have great conversations with. So that was number one, my first observation.
yeah.
My second was, you just slightly slipped in and went, we suddenly went to zero income. Like, it's quite a major thing that actually most business owners can be very, it can be very, very easy in those situations to react emotionally. How do you break yourself out of that? Like, emotions are good, and we obviously need to be very emotionally connected to things, but actually having an emotional reaction and then taking an emotional action off the back of it doesn't very often lead to good results. So how did you break yourself from an emotional reaction to go, oh my God, we've got no income at all, to actually we can get through this? Hey there. Really sorry for interrupting, but I really wanted to let you know about some amazing bonus content we have available for you. You see, not only do we record behind the scenes, but also we go deeper into some of the key topics that come up during the conversation. Now, you can find out more about this and access all of it free of charge over on Facebook. Just search for the Leaky Bucket Podcast Community.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really honest with you, Ian. I wanted to hide behind my sofa for 3 months and never come out, until that was over. Because in my head, 3 months is a magic number. It's clearly going to be over in 3 months at that point. And I think, we can forgive. I think we're going to have an emotional reaction. It's always the first thing to happen. It's always what you do from there. I'm not going to say I'm perfect at this, but what I try to do, and what kind of I have to remind myself of all the time, and this can be, from small things and emotional reactions to big things, hopefully nothing ever as big as this pandemic, is just to kind of go to allow a little bit of space, because I'm really, I'm really aware that it takes a little while for emotions to subside, and when they subside, the logical thinking can kick in a little bit more, increasingly so. So it's almost if you do not have to act right now, set a time limit. If you need to, set a timer, you know, and some things it's like the email that triggers you and you think, okay, I'm not going to respond to that for half an hour because by then I'll be a lot calmer and more rational. With the pandemic, to be fair, I feel like it might have taken a couple of years for me to calm down, but I didn't have that time. So, it was that piece. I'm very lucky as well that, again, pointing to the people I work with, but, for me, it was hugely emotional. I love my work. I love, the work we get to do, and I'm very connected to my business. So it wasn't just, oh, this is something I do. And I think it's the case for most business owners. It's not just something we do, like it's something we love as well. So I had that real kind of like, I'm losing the thing I love doing, and that is actually what I think I'm meant to be doing, and so on. So luckily, again, other people help you get through that because they don't necessarily have those emotions about your business, so they can see it more clearly and coolly in a way that's needed. So again, the other way I got past that, or at least could move forward, was to talk to others. And then probably the third thing I'd say is just to focus on what you can do immediately that doesn't create huge ripples or massive knee-jerk reactions, but also keeps you moving forward and making you feel, particularly in the pandemic, like you had some control. So things like, right, what do the numbers look like? How long have we got? There was a couple of weeks when furlough hadn't been announced. And I'm looking at my team thinking, you're all about to lose your livelihoods unless we can turn this round. So, that mapping out, which I didn't do, my husband and colleague did, but getting all that information and kind of trying to get data and facts to help inform, instead of just going, I feel like we should do this to do it, which in my case would have been hiding behind the sofa and crying.
I think that there's many people who could have taken that option and just gone, yeah, let's just hide and cry, and hopefully this all disappears by the time I'm prepared to come back out. But I think, it is that having that presence of mind, isn't it, to shake off what you think. Obviously your body wants to react and your mind wants to react in that way because that's what it thinks the best thing to do is, and you've got to sort of coerce yourself around to a better way of thinking, and that's a lot easier said than done. So I think, yes, emotional reaction, but you can see some element of logic behind sort of the reaction as well, to go, well, yeah, we have no income, we have no business if you have no income, but actually to be able to just rethink that, sort of go, well, actually, what would we do if we didn't have the option of actually going into schools? What would we have built then? That almost feels like that's what you've done. It almost went back to basics and go, okay, well, if you can't do it that way, what way do you do it? And what challenges have people got right now, and how do we help?
Yeah. And I think also, by this point we were almost 10 years old. So I think it was also, I think the nice thing for us was we weren't at a much earlier stage. Because I think if you're really early on, you probably just think, well, this idea's not going to get off the ground, or I need to do something completely different, or however. But because we were much further on, so we know, like, these aren't just head teachers that I've not yet met. Like, these are head teachers we've worked with for years, and they're going through it. Like, how do we serve our clients at a time when what we would normally do just doesn't work? It's not appropriate. Of course, they're not going to want to be doing that kind of training when their schools have just closed. So I think also kind of having that awareness of that, and also just clients, head teachers we adore. It's fair to say we love the schools we work with, and they would go, like, honestly, I still don't think we fully appreciate how much schools went through and how heavy a load they bore during the pandemic. And I don't say that, like, the NHS absolutely did, and we recognise that, but I think there are a lot of heroes out there that aren't talked about that much, and certainly weren't at the time. So it was just also that, how do we help this group of people in a way that is meaningful, which is what we'd always done, but we just didn't know quite at that point how to do that in the context of a global pandemic.
And actually, it's probably nothing like a global pandemic to actually make you realise of what impact are we really having. Like, do you almost look back now and go, well, actually, we said we were impactful before, but actually, in comparison to what we do now, we didn't really do that much.
No, I think it just let us see ways that we could take it to another level. And it's funny, isn't it? Because things that frustrated me before, actually the pandemic then resolved for me. So like, you know, how we'd work with lots of different head teachers in lots of different locations. And I always wanted these great heads I knew to meet each other, because I knew they'd cross-pollinate ideas and they'd love the energy and they'd be with like-minded people, but they're all over the place, and I was going all over the place, but they weren't going to. And like now, of course, that is no barrier. So let's see how we can actually take what we've done before and have even higher impact as a result.
So moving forward, we've sort of looked historically, and we've looked and tried to look at areas that are maybe challenges within the business that you need to sort of fix. With that being the case, do you have current areas that you're trying to fix, or is everything great and perfect and runs smoothly every day? And
does anyone ever get to that place, Ian? Tell me they do, because I keep trying to get to that perfectly smooth place and never do. No, it's always work in progress, and there's always dumb tax to be paid for bad decisions made where you think something's going to solve your world and it doesn't. Yes, there's loads, and we're always trying to find things to improve. For every single day there is something else that comes up. Like even now, I know there are a couple of things that's like, oh, I know that's something like that I need to get to and improve, and we could do that better. I even have like reminders to say, like, you've got to find some time to. It keeps getting bumped. I'm not going to lie, it keeps getting bumped, and I'm kicking myself because in my head I'm having that internal argument. But you know what? At least it is a reminder, and it is getting bumped, as opposed to just being a niggling thought every now and then that can be discarded and ultimately forgotten. There's all. I mean, like I say, does anyone ever get to that place? I think I'd probably worry as well, as much as I kind of want to get to the place where it's all running smoothly. I think I'd worry if I thought it was, because I think that means I'm not seeing where the opportunities are.
Yeah, I think that's a great reflection. I think we have the question in it, I think, because most business owners think that's what it's like for the big successful public companies that you see. Oh, it's all running smoothly and there's never any issues. But that's not the reality. You know, most of us as business owners, we're fixing issues on a daily basis, and we're always trying to have that opportunity where we look for what's the problem or the opportunity that we can't currently see. And I think it was something you commented to me actually when we were preparing for this, was that how do you stop that old way of thinking getting in the way of the new way of thinking? Because the old way is safe, because you know that possibly to be true, but the new way might be to challenge what you believe to be true, to go, is it really true? Because have I moved on and have I developed, or has the world moved on and the world developed? And therefore actually, in some respects, sometimes are you the problem, like, because you need to be leading and moving forward at the greatest speed. So how do you make sure that you're leading by example? If you have had to look back, like, over, I was going to say your business career, but maybe the whole of your career, have there got any biggest lessons that you think that you've picked up over that time that you think others could learn from?
There's certainly a lot of lessons, which are the biggest ones. I think definitely that lesson about going from sole trader to, bringing people on to, to do some of what you do, and just replicating. That was a big lesson, and I try to watch out for that. The other one is the one I call the Hydra's head. So we use Google Workspace, and there's a new spreadsheet for this and a new document for that, and it's like, no, actually, we probably only need 3 good documents for all like key areas. So just watching out. It's really easy to proliferate. Is that the right word? But the danger of that as well, sometimes you need to kind of just be explorative and have many things going on in order to simplify. So I guess I'm also aware of the kind of the expansion and contraction of business, in terms of, you've got to try different things in order to, and expand trying different things, the number of things you're trying, in order to then contract down to the things that work, and then at some point it will happen again. And that can be the case with marketing, it can be the case with, how many Google Docs you've got or whatever. But like I say, it's the kind of the Hydra's head. It needs to be there for the right reason. And I can't say I've got a brilliant way of deciding when it is for the right reason. I think that's one of the challenges about business. Probably the other one for me is that I sometimes think that some piece of software is going to solve all my problems. And I'd like it to. We're all looking for the one thing that would, resolve whatever it is we're doing. And I think what I've really learned is that actually what's more important is what are your processes and thinking through that. And you don't necessarily need some shiny bit of kit. It's actually the thinking and the ongoing kind of discipline to keep working your internal processes and reviewing them and taking the actions that need to be done that's more important than the bit of software. But I think even now there's a bit of me like, I just want a bit of software that makes everything work better, and it's never really worked for me. There have been small things that software have been able to improve, definitely, you know, like very small, specific, isolated problems. But the bigger stuff, actually, I'd say process over systems in many instances can work well. But again, there's no kind of blanket rule for anything, is there? I feel like I've just spoken in grey and no black and white, you know, like, hedge your bet, Sonia. But I just, you know, there is no one thing, there is no few definitive answers.
I think it's a great reflection, to be fair, to go, actually, no, there isn't anything that's specific, because I think as business owners, I think we're all trying to possibly overcomplicate it and go, actually, there's some magical potion somewhere that fixes these huge big, and that's really not the case. The case is there isn't a one solution that fixes all the problems. There's different solutions for different problems. There's hybrid solutions for other problems. There's something you thought was a fix for one problem that fixes a completely different problem. And it's about being explorative and trying different things, and not trying to get yourself like to the best possible solution at version 1. Like version 1 just needs to be a step improvement from the current version you're on. Because if you try and build that absolute perfect solution straight away, like, do you ever launch it and never get started because you're always picking holes in it? And in reality, somebody might not like what you've created anyway. It doesn't work in reality. So I think, yeah, being open to being that there are multiple different problems and there's multiple different lessons and they show up in multiple different ways is a great big overall lesson, just to go, you don't know where they're going to come from. I like that. Yeah.
I think as well, like, go back to that point earlier about, you know, surrounding yourself with people who ideally know more than you do. You know, that's what you want. And hopefully you can contribute to them as well. It's, you know, it's give and take. But there are so many people with such great experience out there. And I think that's been a real benefit I've experienced throughout, but particularly in the last few years. I feel like that's really upped for me. The benefit of other people's, their lessons learned. I mean, this is like this podcast, isn't it? It's the benefit of other people, you know, learning from each other to help us navigate that course even better.
Yeah, I think the concept of the podcast we wanted to do was just go, it's all great to celebrate all the wins and everything that everybody's got, and that's good. We should celebrate the wins. But I think sometimes if you're that business owner that's, I was going to say early on in the journey, but actually it could just be at any stage in the journey where you're going through a difficult time as well, that it's easy to think that everybody else they don't have that, it's all easy for them and it's all sorted. And the reality is that's not the case. It may be able to look like that through marketing and stuff that we've got on the face of things, but often we're all looking at the leaks and the challenges and things that we've got within our own business and how we can improve and fix those. And actually, like you say, if you get multiple people together with great minds, actually somebody disconnected from your business without that emotional input can often have the most simple solutions for major problems that you've been trying to fix forever. Yeah.
It's really hard to see it's really hard to see your own business in the way that other people do. And just on that point about like we're looking at other businesses and thinking they've got it all sorted. I love that phrase. It's used more as on a kind of an individual level, but I think it applies to this as well. It's like we're often comparing kind of our insides to other people's outsides. But what we don't know is their inside. So exactly say like business can look like it's running really well and it's really slick from the outside, and that's what we're kind of going, oh, we're not, because look at our systems don't work, but we don't know what their systems are like. You know, it looks good on the outside.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, and that's what we wanted to bring and highlight and go, look, there's great successful business owners, you know, yourself within that as well, running a great successful business, but it's not just been plain sailing. Like, you've had to make some major difficult decisions. You've had to go through some major challenges, such as the pandemic, that, you know, obviously it was challenging for everybody, but not everybody woke up one day with a business that technically no longer existed. And it takes great thinking in order to be able to come through those processes. And Yeah, I know you, again, you played it down, but I'm going to play it up, which is surrounding yourself with great people, because that's great level thinking to go, I don't have all the answers, but actually I'm much closer to having all the answers if I can surround myself with great people who we can just bash ideas around, and something somewhere will come out of that that's good, or certainly at least able to be tested and tried. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Sonia, in order to sort of round things up and move things forward, so where you're working, obviously at the moment, your aim is that you're helping more schools to become outstanding. Have you got any goals that you want to do, sort of long term? How many, a number of schools maybe you want to help, or I don't know, number of children that are being affected by that? And
Yeah, do you know what? That's a question that's kind of we're talking a lot about at the moment. So we've kind of achieved the goals that we set out to this point, and now we're kind of going, right, where do we want to take this? I feel like we're in another growth phase now. So we are looking ahead. So I'm not going to say what that is at the moment, because there's a lot of different things floating around within the team as we kind of get together and kind of work on that. But we're more, for us, the key thing is, are we really making a difference? We'd rather make a bigger difference to a smaller number than a lower difference to a larger number. So it doesn't really answer your question, but we're kind of just trying to work out where that's.
No, I love that approach in a way. Like, yeah, how can you make a big impact to a small number of people, as opposed to, yeah, a small impact to a wide number of people? Yeah, you want to be able to measure that impact and feel it and see the results of what you're doing, which it sounds like you're doing great anyway. And yeah, if you've already achieved the goals you set out to originally, then
Thank you.
yeah, but it takes some big thinking then to go, actually, if we've achieved what we wanted to achieve, then we want to be really clear on what we're going to achieve next. Not, yeah, I like the way you're keeping that back, because actually, no, it's not right if it's not finalised and sorted. That's good. It needs good quality thinking on it. So it's fine. And if people wanted to find out more about what they can do, I understand they can head to company website, yeah, which is www.ukheadsup.com. If there's head teachers or anything listening and they want to get more information, you've obviously got both of your books. Can you just remind me of the titles of those again?
Yeah, so Journey to Outstanding, make sure you get the second edition, because that's updated with a ton of resources in it, and Successful Difficult Conversations.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sonia, so much for your time, and wish you all the best for the future.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I hope it's useful to anyone listening.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'd love it if you could help spread the message by clicking subscribe and leaving a review. Also, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can also find more info and links in the show notes below. See you next time.